Sinjo. Thanks, brother. My goodness. Thanks, bro. See, yeah. Care. Ski? Steve. Good start, Steve. Is that a baby boy name suggestion you're giving me there? See, what you may not have picked up about me, my name is Ben. My surname is Stephenson, and Stephenson it's not a vibe. Yeah. Imagine the next generation, Stephenson's son. That'd be cool. It's a vibe. Wowee. Well, Camp No Fear, we've made it to night 3, and it's a great joy. And can I say, just in response to what Sinj just said, it's a great privilege to be here. So thank you so much for having me. I feel like I'm being thanked for being here. I feel so much gratitude for being welcomed into this place. My wife, who was at home and pregnant, received a bouquet of flowers at our door from you guys at Camp No Fear to say thanks. And I think that is very sweet. You are such a generous and encouraging environment. So we just feel that so much from this team. So it's a joy to be here. We are on the final night. And so I wanted to start off with a Bible verse that we're going to look at today about our great race. But I thought to get us kicked off, will you just capture this moment with me? The sights, the sounds, the smell, with a big inhale of Camp No Fear night 3. Here we go. Inhale. Hold it for a second at the top and breathe it out. Give me another one of those. Breathe it in. The joy of the day. Hold it. Out we go. One last one. You ready for it? Make this the biggest one yet. In through the nose. Hold it there. Out through the mouth. Beautiful. Beautiful. We've got a good night ahead, but we do need to mark these moments because they pass quickly and they're wonderful moments. Will you read our Bible passage about our great race as we get into tonight? Here's what we're going to read together. Can you read it with me? We want to do this nice and loud. Let us strip off every weight that slows us down, especially the sin that so easily trips us up. Next slide. And let us run with endurance the race God has set before us. Let us run with endurance the race God has set before us. We've been looking at the great race this week, right? And that doesn't end at the end of camp on night 3. This continues, this great race that we're stepping into. And that's what we want to look at tonight. And what I want to start off with is just by showing you something that I don't think I've told anybody publicly before. Right? I don't think anyone has seen what I'm about to show you. It's a weird thing that happened to me on Instagram. Has anyone got Instagram in the room? All right. I got a weird message. It was pretty unique. It caught me off guard. I received a message from someone. My name is Ben Stephenson, from someone called Ben Stephenson. Right? Here's the message that I got. Next slide. It just said, "Good evening, fellas. Next slide. Let's go, bro. Another Ben Stephenson. Yeah, all these Ben Stephensons getting added to the group. Together we can conquer the planet and anything that stands in our way." And I realized this group is called Ben Stephensons Unite. So, bit of a vibe, getting added to this group. Next slide. Have a look at what happens next. So, everyone starts introducing each other. He's like, there are other Ben Stephensons, but the group's full. So, we're the superior ones. Natural selection is at work here. One Ben Stephenson left. He wasn't vibing it. I love this one. I left this in. This is a lawyer from New York City. And he's like, everyone's like, "Where are you from?" And he's saying, "I'm from New York City. This is amazing and hilarious." I picture like Harvey Specter from Suits just joining our little Ben Stephenson Unite chat. So the group's kicking off. We've got our lawyer in there. Have a look at the next slide. We share some significant moments in life and we cheer one another on in this group. Channel Ben, I've been accepted into college. Same guy a year later. I finished my first year of college. Good on you, Benny. Got a new kitten this week, sushi. That's me, I'm the blue. Congrats, Benny. Big life event getting sushi. I told the boys about my baby coming up. Having a baby in March. Wow, congrats, Ben Jr. Steve. No. Yay, that's sick. Join the Navy. Aye, doing the Ben's proud. Just started dating someone, says our says our New York City lawyer. So we celebrate some stuff together in the Ben Stephenson's Unite group. Go to the next slide. It's a bit of a space to vent. I was like, hey, it's been a big couple of years. How you doing, Ben's? Yeah, you too, doing well. Anyone want to rant about anything? This guy's like, me and my girlfriend of 4 years broke up. But it's awesome because now I have time to focus on myself and spend time doing other things. Woo! So good. So next slide, we share some common experiences together, the Ben Stephenson's Unite. When telling people your name's Stephenson, do you say Stephenson with a PH? Yeah, it's basically a requirement. All those fake Ben Stephensons with a V. We should meet in the middle of the country and have a battle, the PHs versus the Vs. One time I told a doctor it was Stephenson with a PH and he wrote Stephenson. How did he pass med school? My neighbours are the Stephensons with a V. Very confusing. What a predicament. That's poop on the front porch worthy, I think. Look at us. We share these common experiences, but in other ways, we're very different. Have a look at this final one. I was the peacemaker in this setting. Who is this? I wrote back, peacemaker. Every Ben Stephenson on Instagram. Who found my account? Tell me, I'm reporting you to the cops. You just came up on a search for Ben Stephenson, same as the rest of us. No need to worry. You can leave the chat if you'd like. I'm leaving and reporting you. I hate. Ben Stephenson left the group. You win some, you lose some, don't you? And I started thinking to myself, do all the Ben Stephensons have something in common? And I asked the question, is anyone looking for a PhD thesis they can study if these people with the same names have anything in common? And we realised, no, not really at all. The one thing we have in common is the same name. And I deduced, just having the same name does nothing to change your commonality of interest and motivation and the style of life that you have of that little experiment and that little story. Isn't that fun? Who's going to go home and start this Instagram group with all the people there now? Straight out of here. Just having the same name changes nothing. Doesn't change how you act, doesn't change your motivations, doesn't change what you hitch your hopes onto. May it not be so with followers of Jesus. May it not be so with followers of Jesus that we just slap on the name follower of Jesus and nothing changes, nothing unites us, nothing has our motivations heading in the same direction. We're not racing for the same thing. May it not be so with us. May it not be so with us. You might be getting a sense from being with followers of Jesus in the room for the last couple of days at Camp No Fear. That these people that are following after Jesus maybe live a bit differently than the people that don't. That the people that you might spend some of the rest of your time with during the week, maybe this is very familiar with you and this weekend's maybe just been a reminder or like a reshift of some stuff. But followers of Jesus do it a little different. And I believe that when you're following God, you're a much fuller and bigger version of yourself than when you're not following Jesus. So as I say, maybe it's your first experience of this. Maybe you've been doing this for a little while. This is a reminder. But when the rubber hits the road and you're out there in the real world, I wonder if you're asking yourself, what does this look like, this great race, when we get outside of this camp weekend? What does it look like to be a follower of Jesus? Is there anything that looks different for followers of Jesus out there? I know what it looks like in this room, right? And this room is like the launch pad for you to take off and run this great race. This is the most encouraging, cheering people that are in your corner looking to set you up for a win and catch you when you fall, might I say. What does it look like out there? How should I look different to other people? And part of what it might look like that's a bit different for a follower of Jesus is how you go about it. As you are going, how you go about living your life, what you're doing. A good friend of mine gave me this tip. He said, if you're in doubt, live as Jesus would live if he were living your life. And I found that to be a pretty helpful thing, right? Because not just what would Jesus do, because this guy, the biblical and historical Jesus, he was a carpenter, right? Or a stonemason living in the Middle East. His life looked a bit different to mine. But I can kind of get a handle on what Jesus would do if he were living my life, if he were here in Melbourne, if he were working my job, if he were going to your school. Like, what would Jesus look like? What would he do if he was walking in your shoes, if he lived in your family? slept in your bed, woke up on your pillow? Like, what things would he think? What would he do? I can get my handle around that. And I can start to sharpen myself, you might too, with understanding what Jesus is more like by reading my Bible, hearing the stories about him, knowing a bit of what he's like, and I can get a bit of a handle on that. As you are going, and I read that Jesus engaged with people, he was interruptible, right? So there's this story of Jesus walking and someone reaches out and touches the bottom. They've got like a dress on, don't they? Do you call that a cloak or a robe, whatever? Touches his little dress. And he says, his robe is respectful, come on. He says, who touched me? And he turns around and he sees the woman and he stops and he engages. You got the story of little Zacchaeus, if you know that, if you went to Sunday school. And little Zacchaeus climbs up the tree and Jesus sees the man and he stops and he engages with him. And you got the story of like Jesus teaching in that house and those guys drop their friend down on a bed, lower him down in the middle of the room because he's sick. Jesus stops. He sees the man. He's interruptible. He engages. And what this looked like in my life, this is a little bit of a shameful story for me, but I'm going to share it with you. I don't catch public transport too often, okay? Are you a public transporter? Do you get much train and stuff? Frankston train station down the line. It wasn't Frankston that I was in, but I was on a train. And I was sort of minding my own business, doing my own thing. And this gentleman hops on the train and he breaks the silence of the carriage. And he starts walking up and down the carriage, asking, can anyone help him get some money for some food? He was really dirty. His clothes were really dirty. His nails and his hair really matted. And he's walking up and back, can anyone help me? Can anyone help me? Pretty shamelessly breaking the silence of the carriage. Everyone else was kind of in their comfortable sort of world. And as he's walking up and back, everyone's sort of waving him off. No, they can't help. He gets no money. And coincidentally, he sits sort of opposite me on the train. We can go to the next slide. I've got a little subway. Sits opposite me. This is not a real photo, by the way, just to help you imagine. Sits down beside me like across the train. And I look down at what I have with me, and all I have is my phone. And I'd just been out and I'd used PayWave to pay. And I bought this little 6-pack of chai teas in little bottles for my wife to bring home. She likes those. So I was on the way to take her the chais back and didn't have any cash to give him or anything. But I look down at my chais and I look at the man that had been unsuccessful to get anything from anyone on the train. And I thought to myself, what would Jesus do if he were living my life? He'd probably see the man. He'd probably be interruptible. And I look down at the chais and I get one in my hand and I kind of look up to him and sort of gesture, do you want one of these chais? This is a little bit of a weird thing. It's not food, but do you want one of these? And catches my eye and he says, no, I don't want one of those. I said, okay. Sorry, man. Tried my best. That's all I have. And but he sort of realized that he had a bit of an ally in me in that moment. And so after a couple of minutes, he was like, man, which station are you getting off at? Maybe I could get off with you and you could buy me something using your phone. And I was like, yeah, cool. This is the station. And there are like some little restaurants nearby. I knew there was a really cheap little pizza place. I could like get him a slice for pretty cheap. Yeah, this is the station. Come off with me. So we stop together, get off the train. We're walking. And we get to the like elevator out of the station toward the pizza places, and he's like, do you know they like the restaurants around the station, they mark everything up heaps because it's really close and convenient. Would you mind if we like went one street over? Like you can get more food for less money out there. I was like, yeah, that's cool, man. Like I've got time. I'm not in a rush. Just bringing chai teas home to my wife. And so we walk one street over, and he's like, do you know, bro, restaurants, because you're paying for the food to be cooked, like you're paying extra for less food anyway. I know a supermarket that's just like a couple of blocks along. Would you be comfortable to go to the supermarket? It won't cost you any more, just a little bit of your time to go to the supermarket a couple of blocks over. And I was like, yeah, sure, man. Like I've got time. Let's go a couple of blocks over to the supermarket, get you some food. We start walking that way. We get chatting. I asked him a bit of his story. Any engagement with church before, man? Do you have a faith? That kind of thing. And he's like, you know, bro, there's supermarkets and there's supermarkets, hey? Like, there's those normal ones and then there's like the bulk ones, the ones where you can pay a bit and get like a massive supply of something. if we went there, like, wouldn't cost you any more, but we could get a little bit more that way, and that would really help me out. I'm like, all right, bro, like, lead the way. A bulk supermarket in the area, so walk a few more blocks. The walk's getting a little longer. We finally arrive at this bulk supermarket, and we get in there. And what would you do? Like, you walk in the doors of the supermarket, you say, like, go choose some stuff. Like, what do you do? And so we were walking together. I said, yeah, man, grab a drink, grab some food, whatever you need. Happy to buy some stuff. And we're walking along, and we walk past this big pallet of toilet paper. And he goes, I've got an idea. I have this friend, and if I bring like that to her house, she'd probably like allow me to stay there for a couple of nights and cook me a few hot meals. Like if I could offer her something like that, like a toiletries type thing, that would really help her out. So would you mind if we went down that route? And I was like, look, bro, we've come this far. I'm looking at the price tag and it's like $30 or something for a thing. I'm like, just thinking back to the moment of looking down at my chai on the train and going, how did we get here? Like you... And I said, bro, like, thinking to myself, what would Jesus do if he were living my life? What am I going to do with $30 that's more important than this guy getting a few hot meals and a couple of nights? So I said, cool, man, grab the thing. We get to the checkout with this bulk supply of toilet paper and no food, by the way. And he scans it through. He goes, while we're here, she's got a washing machine. Would you mind if I grab some like Tide Pods? I could wash my clothes. And he's caked with like greasy clothes, super dirty. I said, of course, man, go grab some stuff. He brings back 2 packets of those. We slide them through. So I'm kind of like walking away from that. I asked him if he wanted the receipt when the lady asked me, and he said yes. So he grabs the receipt. We parted ways. I never saw the guy again. And I was walking back home, like the extra few blocks, thinking to myself, I'm $40 out of pocket here. How did my choices lead me to this position? I'm going to have to go back and tell my wife this story, where I'm pretty sure I just got swindled out of $40 by this homeless guy. And I was suspicious of that already because he kept the receipt, and I realized he could probably just turn around as soon as I leave and cash it back in for my cash. And so something in my heart like hardened a little bit that I'd probably just been swindled. I was already a bit suspicious about giving money to people begging for it anyway. I don't know if you are too. It's something that I sort of battle with. I wasn't proud of myself walking home thinking I'd just been conned out of $40 to tell that to my wife. But I was proud that a follower of Jesus on the train had acted differently to everyone else on the train. I was really happy with that because I think we need more of that in the world. People that are going to set themselves apart, govern themselves a little differently. If Jesus is our example, then we should look a little bit different from everyone else when we get home. So when we hitch our hope onto Jesus, our destination changes. We've spoken about this a little bit over the last couple of nights. And so I want to look at, as we're doing our great race, as we're heading in that great race direction, what is our destination? Where are we heading? What does that change to? And I want to look at the words of Jesus in Matthew 28. It's the very end of all of Jesus' life. If you're reading the Bible, it's the very end of the book of Matthew, talking about Jesus' life. One of the final things that he says. He says, as you're going into the world, talking to like the people he's trained up, his apprentices, right? The people that he wants to be like him, that went and spread the Jesus message that you and I now live in today. As you're going into the world, make disciples of all nations. Make disciples of all nations. As you're going into the nations, make disciples. Make more people that look to me as their example. Baptizing them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey all I've commanded you. And he says, I'm with you always to the very end of the age. He gives this mission to the people. As you're going, as you do in your life, as you're going to your school, as you're going to your job, as you're being banned on the public transport, as you're going, make disciples, make other people that treat me and look to me as their guide and their hope like you do. Pass this on. Share what you've received. Because I know from what I read of Jesus, if it stops with me, it's not what Jesus started. If it stops with me, it's not what Jesus started. Jesus started a movement and he said, go into the world and spread this. You don't just want to hold what you've received, but you want to pass it on to the next generation. And the beautiful thing that I think about Camp No Fear is when I look at the heritage of leaders that have been a camper, that have been sown into and received, going from camper and youth to leader, to passing it on to the next generation, to keeping this thing going so that you and I can enjoy it in 2024, 26 years on from the first Camp No Fear. Isn't that phenomenal? That people are getting this message, and this is like a picture of what God instructs us to do. As we receive, pass it on. And so my question to you, if that's our mantle as we have a race for Jesus and we're heading toward like spreading this and multiplying ourselves, is that always easy and is that always successful? Do we always get it right? Can we always be sure? Or like me on the train, are you sometimes left doubting, am I making a difference? Did I do the right thing? Was that correct? Is my method all right? And I want to look at another teaching of Jesus, our final thing that we're looking at today, where he tells this story. And we have got this on the slides. The parable of the sower. And he tells this story and he's like, this sower of seeds was walking along throwing seeds out. And some of the seeds landed on the path, like the footpath. That's not where seeds go. And so the birds came down and they picked those up for bird food. Some of the seeds, they land on rocky ground and they actually did turn into plants, but the rocks, they didn't have much roots to go down. So they shot up really quickly, but then the sun came and the plants died, withered away. Some of the seeds landed on thorns. And so they actually grew up fine, but the thorns grew up with them and kind of choked out the plant and the plant died. And then the fourth example, but some of the seeds fell on good soil. What made it good soil? Because it grew up and it made grain. And it multiplied 30, 60, 100 folds. It was a multiplying bit of grain when it falls on the good soil. So he tells this story to his people, his followers, and they're like, good story. What does that mean? What's the seed thing about? You and I might know the explanation. But he goes on to say, if you don't understand this story, you're not going to understand any of the stories that I tell. This is like the keystone story. This is the thing to understand. And he says, the seeds are the word of God. What you and I have been exchanging and receiving the last few days, what will continue to be part of our great race. The seeds of the word of God, the message of Jesus, and when they're thrown on the path, it's like when someone has a hard heart. The enemy takes the seed away. It doesn't settle anywhere. It doesn't change them at all. We don't want to hear it. We might have an internal voice that says, don't take this in. Like, this is rubbish. Excuse this. So he's telling this to his people, explaining this. He says, if it falls on the hard ground, it's like that. If it falls on the rocky ground, it's like people that receive the word initially with joy, but there's no real room for it, and there's no roots, like no space for it to go down. So there might be like a yeah moment, like how good is this? Leave camp. But then the plant dies as soon as there's any kind of hardship. Doesn't have any longevity to it. He says if it falls on the thorns, it's like people who hear the word of God, and it grows. But the cares of the world, like we spoke about on night one, people that hitch their hope onto the pleasures and the peace and the different things that are not how Jesus designed us to hitch our hope onto, they grow up with it. And it says the deceitfulness of the world, pleasure, riches, they grow up and they choke out any kind of transformation potential of the message of God. And then he says, but the good soil are people that hear the word, and it bears fruit, 30, 60, 100-fold. It goes beyond them. It doesn't just stop with them. If it stops with them, it's not good soil, it's not good fruit. Good fruit in Jesus' mind is something that multiplies and something that spreads. So the hearers might have realized, not only is Jesus telling them what to expect from others as they share their faith, but maybe a challenge for the hearers too, like the people that he's there with, the disciples, maybe a challenge for you and I in the room, that you and I might reflect. Yeah, as I'm hearing from God, as I've been here at Camp No Fear, maybe I can reflect. Sorry, yeah, very good. Maybe I can reflect moments where I've heard that and I've closed my heart and gone, nah, don't listen to that, don't take that in. I've sort of let that slide away. I haven't caught that in my heart. There might be moments where you're like, yeah, that's awesome, I'm into that, but in reality, when we leave camp and we go back to like school, we maybe don't have a community of people that think like this, that love Jesus like this, That's the people that don't really have roots that'll sink down. And any passion that we can take, like we forget history quickly, don't we? We might forget the passion that we had in this room quickly if we don't have like people around us that can spur us on and can help us along the way. That's like the people with the seed on the thorns. And then you and I might think like, that's the rocky ground, the thorns might pop up. You and I might leave camp and then go, but I do really like all of those pretty things, and I do want a good, following on Instagram, and all the things that we're all involved with can sort of sneak in, and it's like the thorns choking out the plant. But God's will for us, if we are to run the great race with perseverance, is to cast off that stuff. Cast off the things that would hinder us. Cast off the fear, the inadequacy, doing it alone, the isolation. Cast those things off so that we can run with perseverance the race that God has put before us. And what that looks like in my world, because sometimes it's helpful just to hear a couple of stories. It might look like Michael that I mentioned last night that spoke to my dad in high school. And he wasn't like, hey, I'm a Christian, Dale. Turn or burn, like hell's coming. You know what I mean? He did it in a bit of a cooler way. And he was like, have you ever read that Bible that you're talking so much about? And my dad was like, no, I haven't. He kind of had an appropriate level of challenge, but he lived his faith in a real way, in a way that wasn't going to stop with him. He knew that he had a hope in Jesus, and he thought maybe this angry kid, Dale, like maybe there's something here for him too. Just potentially, I'm gonna shoot my shot. Or it might be like a girl named Joanne, who's at a school in Melbourne, and she decided to start up or restart even like a Christian group that was happening at their school, because schools can be a pretty hopeless place like this sometimes, right? She said, we want to encourage one another. We're in a place where we can pray, talk about the Bible, like spur one another on so that school is not this thorny place that kills faith. So she started that up. They were running that. She realized that there were friends that she was connected with at other schools that were doing the same thing. And she's like, man, we should encourage each other across the schools. So put on this event a little earlier in the year to pull together anyone that was running a Christian group or interested in doing that in their school. And like representatives from 35 different schools came together at this thing, and they were like speaking life and encouraging. They got a speaker in and did worship and stuff to encourage what was happening across the schools in Melbourne. That's an example of someone not letting it stop with them, but looking to pass this on, to be fruitful, to multiply. It might be someone like Brooke, who asked herself, who in my life is showing a bit of interest in me? I know there are people that are really against any kind of talk like this, but I've got this one friend who, like, when I talk, she listens. She like offers to help me out. I seem to have a bit of an open door with her. I wonder if she'd ever be keen on any kind of spiritual, faith-based conversation for me to pass on to her the hope that I've found in Jesus. So she gets up the courage, flicks her a text. Mate, I've been thinking about you and hope you're doing well. Random thought. Would you ever be interested in reading the Bible with me? Like, is that something that would interest you? And she comes straight back. That would be the best. I'd love to do that. Let's do it on Wednesday. Catch up for coffee. Get this thing going. They've been meeting up consistently since. Her friend's asking these great questions and it is exploring faith through the Bible. These little steps of courage that show that the good seed fell on the good soil, doesn't stop with me. It spreads and goes on. This is running the great race. So if we go back to our text that I read at the start, we can skip all those slides about the things we just talked our way through it. There we go. It says, let us strip off every weight that slows us down. If you're running a great race and you got like wet clothes on, unless it's a triathlon, Ricky Ballmer's, but if you got like heavy wet shorts or you got a phone in your pocket, you're about to run a race, like you want to get rid of anything that's going to slow you down from running this race with perseverance. Get rid of that stuff, it says, especially the sin that so easily trips us up. It's like fishing line in your feet or something. I'm going back to try and run this race for Jesus, but I know that like pornography is waiting on my phone or computer, or I know that I've got this like game addiction that I haven't really dealt with, or whatever the sin is, whatever the missing the mark is in your life that is going to be like fishing line in your feet as you're trying to run this race. You know that's going to be an issue that you want to deal with. It says get rid of that stuff. Cast off any weight, especially sin that trips us up. Next slide. And let us run with endurance the race God has set before us. This is not a race that you'll finish next week. What we're stepping into here is a lifelong relationship with Jesus where we want to run the race with endurance. This race lasts a lifetime, a joyful experience, let me tell you. You're a bigger version of yourself for running a race with Jesus for your entire lifetime than anything that's more short-term than that. Run the race with endurance that God has set before you. Can we go to the final slide? Actually, you can go back to that one. That's beautiful. This is how we do it. This is the verse extended. We do this by keeping our eyes on Jesus, the champion who initiates and perfects our faith in him. So final line is just our summary, and I want to leave this on the screen. And what I want to do, I know that we come to camp like this hoping for something, hoping for an impact, hoping for a change. And this is where we want to camp out for tonight. And you might have heard this talk tonight, and we've heard about the seeds and stuff, and you kind of understand, have a bit of a grasp on that. You might have a bit of doubt or unsurety about what this is going to look like. You might be scared about like sharing your faith with somebody else or having those conversations. You might say, I'm not ready yet. You might say, I'm inadequate. I don't know the Bible that well. I'm scared to do it. You might say, I'm on my own. I don't have people in my corner. Whatever it is, what we want to do is open up some space for people to pray for one another tonight, for what we want to cast off, the weights that we want to cast off, the sin that's tangled in us that we want to get rid of, whatever that is for you. Just as leaders can come around to you and put their hand on your shoulder and say, mate, would you like me to pray for you about anything? And you could just say, look, here's what I've been thinking about. I'm scared. Could you pray into my fear? Look, here's probably the weight that I need to cast off is I feel like I can't do it. I feel like other people can, but I feel like I can't. Here's the weight that I need to cast off. I've got this secret thing going on in my life, and it's secret. I've never told anyone about it. I want to be real. I want to get rid of this. You might say, I'm living in isolation. I'm not involved in a youth group. My family don't know Jesus. I need some people in my corner. Could you pray for me to find those people? Could you help me to find those people? Is Gateway Youth something that I could get involved with, like someone that I could do the journey with? So just in a second of silence, I just want you to acknowledge before God in your own heart, like what is it for you? That if he was sitting here right beside you, like coaching you through, saying, I want you to run this race with me with endurance. What do we need to get rid of this weekend? What can we be real about and courageous about and cast off? And you won't have a more supportive and encouraging room than this one, with which you can open up to a leader and say, I'd love some prayer, or a mate and say, I'd love some prayer about that. So we're just going to take a minute or so of silence where you can just think about, like, what is that for me, God? And God does that. If you say, like, point out something, I'm not really sure what that is for me. What do you want me to cast off? What do you want me to pray about? He will tend to highlight something will pop into your mind. What about that thing? So we're going to take a moment of silence like that. And then we're just going to leave the space open a little bit for people to start moving around and tapping people on the shoulder to pray as people feel led. Okay? Let's take a minute. And what we might do just as you're having a minute of silence is just practically, for help of flow of the room, let's all jump to our feet just as we're having a moment of silence. Jump to your feet. Some space to move. God, if I felt you tugging on my heart this weekend and you're wanting me to run this race with endurance with you, what do I need to cast off? What do I need to get rid of? What do I need to receive prayer for in a space like this? And if you think you've got something And you can see your leader, or you can see a mate that you can tap on the shoulder. And you might say, do you want to pray with me? I'll pray with you. Like, how would we want that to go? You can do that now. See if you can eyeball a leader. Might be on the outsides, might be in with you. And just, once you got something and you're like, I'd like to pray about this, you can go find them and do that. Just reminding us of what we said last night, that to be fully known and not loved is what I'm most scared of, but to be fully known like God fully knows you, sees everything, every thought you've had, every action, no matter how wacky it seems, no matter how much you might feel like I'm the weirdest person for doing this or thinking this, like He knows you through and through and He loves you. And He's a God of freedom and He wants you to be free. Doesn't want you to walk in slavery of sin or things that hold you down. He wants to take things off your back. He says, my burden's easy, my yoke's light. So knowing you've got a God that loves you and wants freedom for you, lean into the opportunity to acknowledge that before someone who can pray with you and encourage you in that.